The second hour of the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods filling in for Peter today. And by popular demand, we are going to talk Bitcoin in this second hour. And this is a topic that, up till recently I wasn't interested in looking into because it just seemed too complicated, and I'm a busy guy, and people were asking me, at my libertyclassroom.com, am I going to accept Bitcoins? I thought, well, this would just be a lot of work. Like, why would I want to do that? Am I going to sell my books for Bitcoins? Like, I don't even understand the question. But a couple of weeks ago, I was in New Hampshire for the New Hampshire Liberty Forum put on by the Free State Project, and I talked to these people, these Bitcoin people, and I have to say I'm intrigued, especially because of the way they pitched it as, if you think the Free State Project is great, which I do, then Bitcoin is like 8 gazillion Free State projects in terms of its potential impact. So we've invited Eric Voorhees to join us today, who works for BitInstant, based in New York City. We're not going to get into what BitInstant does until later, because you have to understand Bitcoin first before you can understand BitInstant. But I want Eric to basically make the layman's case here for Bitcoin, explain it to us, and then we'll talk about some of the benefits. But before I bring Eric on, I just want to remind you guys, at the beginning of the show, I told a little story about what I heard at this weekend event, where somebody was telling me about a conference where up on stage, he called a guy from China and had him transfer a substantial amount of money in Bitcoin to him on the stage out of China, which he did, which you're absolutely not allowed to do, and yet it was done right there in front of everybody, and there was nothing the Chinese government could do about it. So that got me interested. So Eric Voorhees, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hi, how you doing, Tom?
Doing well. All right. What I'd like you to do is just start off by, I believe in the old marketing adage that you should lead with the benefits and follow with the proof. So let's start by what's great about Bitcoin, and then secondly, we'll get into what the heck is it. So make the pitch for why libertarians in particular should care.
Okay, well, probably everyone in the world should care about Bitcoin, but libertarians especially. And the reason is that for the first time ever in the history of man, people now have a way to hold and transfer value without any other person being involved or having control over it. So this is the first time that you can possess wealth in a form that you can store and send somewhere else without anyone else having to give you permission for it. And if you look at something like gold, you can certainly store gold without anyone's permission. But it's very difficult to send it without someone else being involved. For example, if you want to send it across the world, you're going to need to use a shipping company, and you're going to need to trust them. And if you're going across borders and you have any significant amount of gold, you're going to have to claim it and then make sure the government's allowed that in, that kind of thing. Bitcoin allows you to send money without any permission from anybody, and that's the really amazing thing about it.
Okay, but how does this pose a challenge to governments? I mean, why would they care? Oh, great, people can transfer money. So how does that hurt them?
Well, it hurts them because you're not just transferring dollars. It's actually its own currency. So to the extent that people start using it instead of government fiat, it is displacing the government fiat. Hypothetically, if a bunch of people started using Bitcoin for their transactions, and it doesn't even have to be for all transactions, just for a portion of them, that necessarily is robbing the government of their power over money because they cannot control Bitcoin and they cannot print it.
Is there a possibility, before we get into the nuts and bolts of what Bitcoin is, well, in fact, maybe we have to do that before I can ask you what would happen if they tried to ban it or something like that. Try to explain to us what exactly is it? Is it a physical thing? I mean, just so that everybody understands this, what exactly so Bitcoin is both the currency itself and the payment system. We use the same term to refer to the whole thing. But what is it, when we're talking about the money aspect of it, what exactly is it?
So Bitcoins actually are just accounting entries in a distributed database called the blockchain. And the blockchain is simply a ledger of all Bitcoin transactions that have taken place, and it's distributed among all Bitcoin users around the world. So when you send 5 Bitcoins to someone else, this global ledger records that your Bitcoin account number sent 5 Bitcoins to another Bitcoin account number. Your account number is thus debited for that, and the person who received it is credited with that. The Bitcoins are not physical. They do not exist anywhere. They are simply ledger entries.
Okay, so is there a possibility that you could now Bitcoin has been doing very well in the past couple of weeks in terms of its value. So is there a chance though that this could become so big? I mean, it's starting to really break out of its initially it was viewed as some kind of an oddball thing, but now more and more people are interested in it. Could it get to a point where governments would say, well, this really is a threat to us. We do need to have power over the money supply. That's part of our lifeblood, and we can't have people transacting in secret in this thing that of its very nature we can't possibly tap into or observe, so we're going to have to just crack down on the whole thing. Could the government do that? Are there ways that governments could do that?
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly try, right? They can use their pen and make anything illegal that they want. The question is whether it would be effective. But first, I think it's important to understand that governments do not yet understand the real threat that is Bitcoin. They know about it, and they see it as a problem for money laundering. They see it as a problem for maybe buying drugs. But they do not understand the real threat, which is that it threatens the power that they wield through manipulation and issuance of their currency. And I'm not sure how long it will take them to realize that that's the real threat of Bitcoin, because most of them don't understand economics enough to even understand that monies should and can compete with each other. But hypothetically, a few years down the road, if they see that Bitcoin as a money is starting to compete with their money, then, well, they probably will try to ban it or regulate it in some way. And this is where things get really interesting, because Bitcoin is not a company or an organization. It's a distributed technology. And so in order to freeze accounts or shut down the Bitcoin system, the government would really have to turn off the entire internet, because there's no server that they can go after to turn it off. There's no business that they can raid. And I think a lot of your listeners may be aware of e-gold, which was a gold instrument several years ago, electronic way to send shares of gold around. And that was very cool, because you could escape government inflation with a money that can be transferred electronically. The problem is that as soon as it gets big enough, the government can go into the e-gold office and take everything and seize the gold and shut it down. And that's exactly what happened. Bitcoin is superior to that because there is no office. So if they try to shut it down, there's no one they can go after.
But you have a website and a company called BitInstant. Can you we're going to take a break in just a minute, but can you give me a summary of what does BitInstant do, and why couldn't they just go and shut down BitInstant?
Yeah, so BitInstant helps people buy Bitcoins easily. So you can use cash, and mostly in the U.S. right now, you can use cash and buy Bitcoins within an hour or so instead of wiring money to an exchange, which takes a few days. But absolutely, the government could shut down a company like BitInstant. The key is that BitInstant is not Bitcoin. And if BitInstant was shut down, it would be an inconvenience, but it does not fundamentally harm the system. And there are many companies like BitInstant and many Bitcoin companies growing up, not just in the U.S., but all over the world. So even if they started taking down those companies, it's a losing battle. There's no way that they can stop everyone from using it.
All right, I've got some more questions about Bitcoin coming up next, but in the meantime, if people want to get started on this, they want like Bitcoins 101, what website do you refer them to?
Probably the best place for new people to go is a site called weusecoins.org. It's WEUSECOINS.org, We Use Coins. And that's a good place to start, but I think it's important for people to realize that it is a little complicated, and it is so powerful that they should really take some time to learn about it, because it's, in an afternoon you can understand it, but don't expect to grasp it in 15 minutes.
Right. And of course also, if you were to ask anybody on the street, not one person in 1,000 could explain to you how the internet works, and yet we all use it and we all love it. So the fact that it can be
Exactly.
tricky to, there's the entry into it can be a little tricky, doesn't invalidate it by any means. All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Eric Voorhees when we come back from this break on the Peter Schiff Show. More on Bitcoin, and I'm going to be throwing a few more objections, and then we'll just see how the thing works and what the benefits are. That's next on the Peter Schiff Show, the gold standard in talk radio.